as we're choosing an airport, and choosing the final approach, and pausing instantly, taking the airspeed, attitude and altitude meters, checking it, and pitching down for 3 seconds. 2, 3. Then pausing it again, checking the airspeed, it's increased, pitch has gone down by 5 to 10 degrees, and our altitude has gotten lower. Then pitching up for 3 more seconds, and then pausing it, and then checking the speed has gone back down, pitch has gone up above the original, and altitude has increased again. So this is the first trial of the second lab, starting mid during the takeoff, like halfway through it. See the landing gear goes to 0 after a distance of about 2,500 feet before it takes off naturally, when it's at 296 pounds of mass. Let's see, the takeoff distance was 3,900 feet. Then the second takeoff, the payload weight 600 pounds. Before it takes off naturally, it gets to a distance of about 4,000, 5,000 feet. Then the final check with a payload of 900 pounds, takeoff distance is at 8,000 feet. And it increased consistently as the payload got heavier. And the second trial of Lab 2 was gravity, how much it weighed and how gravity affected control. See, it's 0.66, which is the gravity of the moon, and the takeoff run is much shorter with low gravity, but the aircraft is much harder to control. See, the gear is already in the air at 300 feet. Start off just going around the plane, checking that the lift vectors over the wings, and for the propeller has vectors too, and so does the tailplane. Flying straight and level in a normal Cessna, constant power, airspeed and total lift. As it go up, the lift increased, and then as it starts slowing down, the lift has decreased again. And as we keep going up and get slower and slower, the air starts to stall. You can see over the left wing the air fluttering, and the lift has decreased a lot as well. And back, airspeed picks up and pull out of the dive, and the lift dramatically increases, then levels out. And in the beach, see the airspeed, level and the drag there, and the airspeed. And see with the gear down, speed's a bit lower. Then on the flaps, you can see combined wing 1 flaps up, it's about 3,000 newtons of lift, and then flaps down, it increases to 3,600 or so, and the drag also increases a lot. Well, the air. We're practicing a landing and lining up with the 4 dots on the left, which 3 are red, 1 is white, all red. But it's a clean landing, flaps up, it's still very fast by the time you land. You can try and pull up to bleed speed a bit, but it's still a very fast landing because there's no flaps used, there's nothing dragging the plane back aside from its own mass. So it stops. This is a landing with flaps. You can see going down, setting the flaps to 10 for the first bit, and then the time here over the runway should be flaps down at 20, which is now. They're very slow, much more controlled approach, still flaring a bit to bleed off speed, and then landing gently when your airspeed is gone. In normal flight, the elevator is level. Pitching it down creates a upwards moment at the tail, pitching the aircraft down. Pitching it up creates a downward moment at the tail, which pitches the aircraft back up. And in level flight, the elevator is level. Here, the center of gravity is moved as far back as possible in the aircraft, with the payload set very, very high. You can see the elevator needs to be pitched far, far down for the aircraft to maintain straight and level, and here the opposite occurs. The elevator has to be pitched up a lot to account for the center of gravity being moved far more forward on the aircraft. This is taking off with a 10-foot wingspan. It's already very, very unmanageable and will continue to be unmanageable, and it will take far, far longer to take off because the small wings generate very little lift. This is a 30-foot wingspan. It's already more stable, just a slight oscillation, and it lifts up way sooner because of generating a normal amount of lift for the aircraft. It lifts up around 900 feet, and this is a 50-foot wingspan, generating the most lift out of the three, and it's already almost off the ground. They're off the ground in a few seconds, generates the most lift with the shortest takeoff distance. This is trying to land with a 10-foot wingspan. It's very, very uncontrollable. It needs to go at a high speed, so if you kill the power early, it will just drop because the wings generate no lift. This is the 50-foot wingspan landing. You can see that the power is off, and it effectively works as a glider. It doesn't lose its speed as quickly and keeps continuing down without power for a great distance. So this is taking off with a 60-foot wingspan, but a 10-ton payload weight. So the flaps are down full 20 degrees, which is landing flaps normally, but the extra lift is needed to take off that 10 tons. As you can see, it takes, on average, it took around 2,800 feet to get it off the ground, despite the large wings generating a lot of lift. This is 2,500 kilo payload, or pound payload, with a wingspan of 30 feet, which takes a lot less time to get off the ground, in about 1,000 feet on average. So the reasonable payload for wings generating enough lift to get it off the ground in that time. And then the smallest wings generate the least lift, but with the same payload as the 30-foot wingspan. It took much longer to get off the ground, about 1,200. This is taking off with 150 horsepower, and the weight is 2,500 pounds, and it needs full flaps to even get off the runway. And this is trying to maneuver with only 150 horsepower. It's incredibly stubborn and stalls even when just turning, as you can see by the flutter of the wing. This is 250 horsepower with the same weight. You can see already has more lift and lifts up sooner on the runway without flaps. It's much easier to control because it has higher power loading. It's much easier to maneuver as well, and it doesn't stall. This is 350 horsepower, but with a higher load. But it still takes off very much quicker than the 150 horsepower, and it's still far easier to maneuver. It doesn't stall even when doing any tricks or maneuvers.